We'll get going here in a second. Sorry I had to cut that off. All right, we ready to go? Sorry about stepping away there for a minute. Glad to have everybody back. I know we have some competition out there in the political world. People are checking some things out, but some of you will be checking this out, streaming it on demand a little bit later. That's cool. Gotta get it done tonight. All right, let's roll. Ready? It is Tuesday night in East Lansing, Michigan. Come on in, gather around, gather around, gather around. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Let's talk some Michigan State football, Michigan State basketball, Michigan State sports in general. Go ahead and we got the call. We got the phone on there, phone number if anyone wants to call in. We wanted to have Ron Big Movie Armstrong on tonight, but he's feeling under the weather. Had to cancel his appearance. Last week we did not have Spartan Mag live because my voice wasn't working. I had a little bit of a cold, brought that back from Boston. My guy, Paul Cornerback, he was playing hurt last week. It's going around a little bit. Got tested. Was not COVID. So appreciate all the concern out there. Just a little cold, but I was feeling okay. Just my voice wasn't working. So now Ron's not feeling very good. But we've got about 13 or 14 questions lined up in the mailbag. Going to take those questions tonight. Call in if you want to. I know the crowd is a little bit lessened tonight because of some things that are going on TV, and I hope I'm not giving a power suggestion for people to move on from us tonight. But understand if you do. But we've got a few online watching right now. We appreciate those that are watching. And we've got the mailbag. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com, been the publisher of SpartanMag.com and Spartan Magazine going back to 1993, SpartanMag.com since about 1996. Since the beginnings of this very internet that we are a part of tonight, we appreciate all the SpartanMag.com subscribers that have supported us over the years. Thanks to Paul Konerdijk, great associate editor, SpartanMag.com. Jason Killip doing a great job as our recruiting anchor. Kenny Jordan, Jake Laskawa doing a great job. Matt Dorsey still chiming in from time to time. Was thinking about bringing Matt Dorsey in tonight. I might even text him right now. He's probably watching the thing, but I'll text him right now if he wants to. If you guys don't mind. And, hey, I was over at Michigan State basketball practice tonight. That was pretty good. I've got some video of Izzo's press conference, little press briefing here on the Spartan Mag site. Give us a like. Also subscribe to the channel, and you'll get updates on when we have new video that's being pushed live, whether it be a VCast. Paul Konerdijk and I recorded a VCast outside the Perlis Plaza after practice today. And also VCasts are certainly a popular thing that we do after games and interviews. Today was Brian Lindgren and Joe Rossi. Was that today? I get them mixed up. Today's Tuesday, right? They spoke, as did Aiden Childs, Jordan Turner. Those interviews can be found here at SpartanMag.com channel. Go to SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber. We'd love to have you over there. SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber. We think that you'll like it. If you like this nonsense, you'll love that stuff. And give us some comments. We'll be reading those comments also as the show moves along. Want to wish everybody a happy bow season in the state of Michigan, those bow hunters that are out there. Also, our viewers in North Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee. I hope you and your loved ones are warm and safe and everything. I don't even know what to say. I just hope that everything, if you're watching this, you're probably okay, but you may know some people that are in a tough situation. And we're thinking about you. So give us a like here in the channel. We would appreciate that. And subscribe to the channel. We would also appreciate that as well. Let's go to question number one. What we're gonna do is take mailbag questions, and we will entertain those questions here. These questions were posted over at the Underground Bunker message board, which is the church of what's happening now with Michigan State sports. It is the daily narrative on Michigan State sports for Michigan State fans all over the country, all over the world. They go there, they post things, they talk, they argue a little bit, not too much. And our staff at SpartanMag.com is there to answer questions and participate in those Michigan State discussions around the clock. And we certainly appreciate all the SpartanMag.com subscribers that come and check it out. Really appreciate you guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being there. These questions were posted over at the SpartanMag.com Underground Bunker message board. We'll take a mailbag style starting right now. Doc Spartan in Las Vegas, Nevada asks, the true freshmen that have played have looked very disciplined. That's what Doc Spartan says. He said, what are their ceilings? He says, is it mostly coaching or talent or maybe both? Also, he says, I know you aren't in the prediction business, but do you feel we can win one or two of the next 4 games? All tough games. Thanks for your great work for 25 plus years. Thank you, Doc Spartan. Been with us 25 years. Thank you. Appreciate that. Can Michigan State win 1 or 2 of the next 4? The next 4 at Oregon, Iowa, Michigan, at Indiana. Can you win 2? Can you win 1? Yes, I think 1. Can you win 2? Yes, I think 2. I'm not in the prediction business. But yes, they can. If Michigan State plays like they did against Ohio State, move the ball, Aiden Childs taking more steps and becoming efficient. I don't want to say safe, but avoiding some of the mistakes that have plagued him early in his career as a starter at Michigan State. Understandable for a young player, but if he continues to take steps like he did in the first half against Ohio State, in a very pressurized situation against a very talented defense, Aiden Childs looked really good, didn't he? Michigan State did not finish in the red zone a couple of times. And the problem in that game is Ohio State is so explosive and so productive that if you fail to hold serve 1 or 2 times, you look up and you're down 17-7, 24-7. Same could happen at Oregon. They are efficient. They are explosive. And they've got a quarterback that's more dynamic and more accurate than Will Howard was for Ohio State. The individual skill position talent, not quite as good as it is at Ohio State, but the quarterback is better at Oregon. But if Michigan State, I'll say the same thing I said in the .comp article I wrote after the game on Saturday, and the same thing I said after the VCast, that Michigan State played well enough in the first half against Ohio State that if Jack Velling does not fumble that ball at the 10-yard line, and maybe the face mask gets called on Aiden Childs, which would erase the fumble down at the 16-yard line, face mask, half the distance to the goal line, first and goal to 8. You give Michigan State that first and goal to 8 and that first goal to 10. Who knows? Maybe they go for it again on fourth down, get stopped again. Maybe they try a field goal, maybe it gets blocked to return for a touchdown. We don't know. But give Michigan State 2 field goals there. I know they're not playing for field goals. But against other teams, they might a little more often. But let's say Michigan State gets 1 touchdown and 1 field goal in those 2 drives there. 10 points. Opening drive, 20-yard line, 4th and 1, sneak. If you kick a field goal there, 13 points. You're not going to beat Ohio State with 13 points. But if you play that way, play that well, get those 2 calls. Malik Spencer gets an interception on 3rd down in the red zone, goes through his hands, they score on the next play on 4th down. Change those 3 plays, and Michigan State would have been down to Ohio State at halftime, probably 17-14, maybe better. You play that well and you erase those mistakes. I know it's not a direct apples to apples because those opportunities won't present themselves specifically identically like that against against Iowa, Michigan, Indiana, Oregon. But if they play that well, minus those mistakes with a couple of calls right here, finish an interception, you play that well, you will be leading at halftime, I think, against Michigan and against Michigan and Iowa. Oregon, maybe. Indiana, maybe. Indiana's offense has looked real good against suspect competition. They put up 500 yards again on Maryland. Maryland's defense we saw is not great, but it's not bad. So Indiana's offense is troublesome. I mean, it's impressive. So 1 win out of that group? Yeah, I think so. Ohio State Michigan State's not going to play another team as talented as Ohio State. Although I think Ohio State is going to have trouble beating Oregon because I'm just not sure that their defense, Ohio State's defense is just not national championship defense. Marshall had, 180 yards in the first half against Ohio State. Michigan State had 180 yards in the first half against Ohio State. I know statistics are for losers, but we know what national champions look like, right? Some of those teams like what Alabama looked like a few years ago. National champions don't have defenses like that. Ohio State has good talent. They have veteran talent on defense, but it's not woven together all that great, in my opinion. Good team, but I don't think they're national champion unless there's some drastic changes. Quarterback's good, but he's not quite dynamic to make up for the some of the leakage on defense, which has not cost them against Marshall and Michigan State all that much, but it will later on, including that game at Oregon. Ohio State could get in trouble there. I have to study Oregon some more here in the next 20 hours, so I'll have some more thoughts maybe about that. The good thing for Michigan State is Oregon is playing Ohio State next week. So when you talk about trap games, is Michigan State a trap game for Oregon? Possibly. Although the presence of Jonathan Smith will probably wake up some of the Oregon Ducks and certainly their crowd. But I'm sure they're looking ahead to a top 10 game against Ohio State the following week. I'm just saying. So, can Michigan State win 1? Yeah, I think they can win 1. My guess is they would win 1 of those. And if they play like they did against Ohio State, only winning 1 of the next 4 would be a disappointment. You go 2-2 in those. Let's say you beat Iowa and Indiana, lose to Michigan and Oregon. I suspect that would include some real progress. Michigan State's pretty thin when it comes to they can't sustain many more injuries. So by the time they get to Indiana, how healthy are they going to be? Meanwhile, Michigan needs to be able to move the ball better because Michigan State's going to scheme some things up. I know Michigan's defense is good, but that game could very well be pretty tight. Let's see. I think my guy Dorsey is asking for the number here. He might call in. So I think losing the next 4 is possible. I think 2-2 is possible. Oregon's going to be very difficult. They might even get into a situation like we said on the VCast today where it could be like one of those trips when you go to Kinnick Stadium at Iowa and you're a good enough team to compete, but things just start negatively snowballing, and I could see it getting away in that regard. Again, I've not studied Oregon. I skimmed through the Oregon State game, skimmed through the first half of UCLA, was watching the Boise State game a little bit back live, but So I'm not going to do much more about the prediction for that game. But Michigan State was competitive enough against Ohio State that they can feel like they can match up and compete and trade blows with a lot of teams. If you can do that with Ohio State, you can do that with a lot of teams. But like I said, I'm not sure Ohio State's a national championship caliber type of team. Doc Spartan says the true freshmen who have played have looked very disciplined. What are their ceilings? Is it mostly coaching or talent, or maybe both? I don't know what you mean by is it coaching or talent or both, but the ceilings. The true freshmen that have played, you're talking about Nick Marsh, Rakeem Johnson, Andrew Dennis. Rakeem Johnson starting at left tackle last week. I was looking up to see, when has Michigan State ever started a left tackle, a true freshman left tackle? And I got a little information on that. It looks like Devontae Dobbs started in 2019 against Rutgers. Appreciate Ben Flieger, Michigan State's fine sports information director, for finding that information and sending it, because I was curious about that. I was polling some people around town that have watched Michigan State closely over the years, and we couldn't come up with one. But Dobbs, short term, did play a little bit, and then again transferred out. Another guy with a lot of talent. Not sure how much he really was driven, how much he really loved football, but kind of rings a bell. But I have to say, the older I get, I can tell you more about the 1995 season than maybe the 2019 season. Probably means I need to start taking some Prevagen or something. I don't know. I think we got Matt Dorsey calling in.
Call from
Matt Dorsey.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
All right, let's bring him in, an astute observer of Michigan State sports for a long time. Recruiting anchor, erstwhile recruiting anchor for SpartanMag.com and Spartan Magazine, good friend Matt Dorsey. Welcome to the show, Matt. How you doing tonight? You are live and on the air.
Good, Jim. Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate the call.
Yeah.
Or the contact.
Man, I always love talking to you because you're an astute observer. You have great opinions. You've been watching Michigan State closely for a lot of years. Covered recruiting for a long time, and you still watch recruiting closely, and I respect your opinion. I've spoken with you a little bit a couple of weeks ago. I called you up from the airport when we were flying back from Maryland. Enjoyed my conversation with you on that day. Have not spoken with you since the Ohio State game and the Boston College game, but I was curious what you thought, what your thoughts about Michigan State football are at this point. I know you watched the Ohio State game closely. Michigan State fans all over the country have strong opinions about how things are looking, and I'm gathering a lot of things. People are patient, but they're seeing the same thing I'm seeing. A lot of positives, which is what a lot of people were hoping and expecting. But it's looked pretty good. Would you agree, despite the 38-7 loss? And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But your thoughts about Michigan State from the first 5 games of the season thus far?
Yeah, it's a great point. Just a couple things. I talk with my father still. Always asking me questions about Michigan State, and I've kind of said the same thing that a lot of people are echoing, that I like the direction of the program. With that being said, you want results, and it's obviously that the program is moving in the right direction. The coaching and the execution, are improved, vastly improved in a lot of areas. With that being said, unfortunately, this team has kind of been decimated by a lot of key injuries. And, it might be a situation where this team ends up being, way better than, let's say last year's team. But of course, the wins and losses might not necessarily equate that or show that, simply because, like I said, the injury bug has really bit them a lot this year. But I like a lot of things that I've seen, and even this last weekend, some of the things you could take as positives, how well they moved the ball in the first half. And obviously, the turnovers kind of derailed things, and they had a couple chances to make a play or here or there. But they weren't, at the last couple years, it's been, game over after the first quarter. Mm-hmm. And you certainly didn't feel that at all. And, I think there's a lot of positives to take away from the things you're seeing on the team. I was thinking the other day, I was trying to think of some different positives that a lot of people aren't talking about. And just one of the things I was thinking about was Alex Van Sumeren. Yeah. Most people coming in this year were thinking, hey, this guy, if he can be in the two deeps and maybe be the fourth guy, mm-hmm. then that's a good sign. Well, this kid's starting. Mm-hmm. And he's playing, solid football as a starter. he's basically moved up the depth chart, and nobody expected that. And people aren't really talking about that, here's a young defensive tackle who's now starting for the program. So that's a positive. Obviously, the offensive line, those young guys playing, I know that was almost unheard of. But I mentioned, I was writing something up and I never finished posting it. But I mentioned, when I watched Johnson's film last year, and I'm sure I told you this, I was just like, you got to be kidding me. How is this kid a 3-star recruit? I mean, if this kid's at Belleville High School, he's top 3 in the state of Michigan, and, he's a top 150 kid. He's just an elite level athlete. And, obviously he's really young and going out there against Ohio State, but it wasn't like he was, out of place out there. And I think it's, the fact of the matter is that over the years, we've talked about how Michigan State has never, started guys so young on the offensive line, which is true. But on the other hand, I've watched Ohio State games and Alabama games and Texas games, and sometimes they have true freshmen starting on the offensive line. So maybe it's something to do with the level of players that Michigan State, obviously that this kid is. And then I'm really excited about, the defense and the linebackers. And, obviously Michigan State, Jordan Turner has played really well, and that was a great signing. But I also like Wayne Matthews a lot, and I like Jordan Hall a lot, and I think Brady Pretzlaff has got a good future. So, there's a lot of positives, I think, in the program, and, it's, we all want to see wins, but, we sort of have to sometimes, take a step back and sort of look at, how the direction of the program. So, I mean, that's what I'm excited about. And, it'll be interesting to see when they play some teams like a Michigan and Iowa. Those are team games that I'm looking forward to seeing. I mean, this week it's going to be it's going to be tough, obviously. Oregon's such a dynamic team with so many great athletes, and you're on the road. But it'll be interesting to see when they match up against teams that, are pretty much one-dimensional and, and don't have this dynamic offense, which makes it difficult for any team to sort of hang with.
We talked about Rakeem Johnson. That's the guy you and I talked about, mentioned on the Underground Bunker message board during the summer or even after signing day. Looking at his film, I was like, this guy is uncommon. I realize he's 6'3". He plays a little bigger than 6'3". But his defensive line film was really good too, the athleticism. And he's the type of guy that I mentioned on this show. I said, I put an asterisk next to his name, and I'm curious and eager to find out what he becomes, because my frame of reference doesn't really include many people or any people like that. The way that he could run, again, not terribly tall. He's in Idaho, not going against the greatest competition, but not bad competition. And I'm like, man, like you said, if this guy were in the state of Michigan, he'd be a 4-star. He'd be a national top 200. Was hidden out in Idaho. He committed to Oregon State. The coaches come to Michigan State. They bring him with them. And, when I first looked at the film, I was like, well, let's see what this guy's all about. And as the film was unwinding, I'm like, goodness, this guy's a horse, man. This guy can go. You saw the same thing. He didn't enroll early.
I remember watching when I watched this film. I remember thinking that, hey, they're going to have to give this guy a shot on. I thought the defensive line was going to be an area where the team lacked depth. So I thought, hey, they got to give this guy a shot at defensive line.
Right.
Because when I watched his film, I mean, I'm sort of dating myself here, but he reminded me, like, I always try to think of, like, who does this guy remind me of? And sometimes they're Spartans, sometimes they're not. But Michigan State recruited a defensive tackle back in the day called Geno Atkins. And I think they ended up, he was out of Florida, St. Thomas Aquinas, and they missed out on the guy. He went to Georgia and had a great, program team and has been an outstanding NFL player as well. But it was like, he reminded me, his film on the defensive side reminded me of Geno Atkins. That's how impressed I was with him. Okay. And then he goes out and he's not even in for spring, and then he goes out and is able to contribute right away. And, he also, I'm sure people knew about this because we talked about on the message board. He put up ridiculous numbers in the shot and disc. That wouldn't have just won the state of Idaho championship. They would have won the state of Michigan championship. That's how explosive, and those are, especially the shot, being able to throw the shot and the disc, which takes coordination and power. He just put up ridiculous numbers that, that, like I said, would have won most states, not just a state like Idaho. So, credit to Michigan State for getting him, for the staff for bringing him along, from Oregon State.
I remember he was doing big things in track and field, and that was one of the things I wanted to look into, comparing his numbers and how they would stack up in the state of Michigan. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that saved me some research. That was something I was planning to do months ago, but thank you for adding that. Rakeem Johnson, like you said, did not enroll early, was not part of spring practice. For him to enroll in the summer and go through, optional walk-ons and walkthroughs and so forth. And, the coaches were impressed with him the first couple of weeks. And then we heard after a week or two that he was into the 2-deep, and then there were some injuries, and he reps in the 2-deep in pregame, and then he starts, against Ohio State at left tackle. He'd already played some right tackle, I think against Prairie View, about 20 snaps. Repped at right tackle in pregame against Maryland or Boston College, but didn't play that day. And there was some talk about him playing right guard after those injuries took place. Show up for the Ohio State game, I never would have dreamed that they would be moving him to left tackle and keeping Brandon Baldwin at right guard. They know the personnel better than I do, and they know that that's the right way to go. And for them to think that Rakeem Johnson right now, being on campus for 7 or 8 weeks, is better than a 3-year starter, Brandon Baldwin at left tackle, speaks to how far he's come along. Against Ohio State, there was the one time when JT got into him, bull rushed him, put him on skates, and got a sack and pushed him back. Rakeem's still a teenager, true freshman, 285 pounds. So there's going to be some times when he loses the physics battle. But he's moving really quickly, and we still have not really seen him. We've seen them run some wide zones, but we've not seen them run wide zones like they will in 2 or 3 years when they have other guys in the offensive line that can move real well also. And when you get 5 guys that can move real well, those wide zone plays become increasingly problematic for a defense. And that's why Rakeem Johnson's at Michigan State, among other things. But for a true freshman, not just to play at left tackle, but to be oiled up and apparently ready at 3 positions, right tackle, left tackle, right guard, can play all of them right now. Again, a low 3-star type of guy. This is not Orlando Pace, right? So great evaluation, good future on this guy. He's not all everything. And Oregon's got a guy, number 2, named Birch, who's going to be a handful, just like JT and Sawyer were, just like number 6 was for Boston College. Birch might be better than all of them because he's got speed and he's got some rotund strength. Number 6 for Boston College was mostly a speed guy with some good technique. Sawyer and JT for Ohio State, a couple of 5-star guys that would have gotten drafted last year. They're good, but not great. I mean, they're not like Chase Young, Joey Bosa type Ohio State defensive ends. They're good, but not great. But, hey, Rakeem Johnson's been on the field against these guys. He survived. I didn't see him looking like tremendously out of place. I have to say that, during mop-up time, he goes to right guard in the 4th quarter, and Rustin Young, another true freshman, came in at left tackle for mop-up time. Rustin Young, another true freshman. Rustin Young's got a good future, but Rustin Young looked like a true freshman. Rustin Young struggled. I'm not going to take it any further than that, but he really struggled. But it was a learning experience for him. That's what a true freshman left tackle is supposed to look like, I would think. Rakeem Johnson, so far, looking really impressive. And you made a good point about Van Sumeren also, Alex Van Sumeren. And I talked about him in the preseason, and I said that, I was really curious about him because we heard a lot of good things about him in the weight room, the things he was doing in the weight room. And every time I went to the football building or went to any event or something that was going on, whether it be a media event or pro day or even just around town over at Moneyball, I'd always run into Alex Van Sumeren. Alex Van Sumeren was always there. You get the idea, he was always in the building, always around the program. And we saw him play about 4 games in 2022, shut it down for a red shirt. Last year became injured during preseason camp, missed the season. So and then he missed the spring while he continued to, he was still on the mend. So we really had not seen him in 20 months, going back to September of 2022. Not sure. I said he could be anything from a 3rd string who doesn't play to the best defensive tackle on the team. I thought there was that wide of a variance. And he comes in and starts right away ahead of Maverick Hansen. The interesting point is none of the coaches really talked him up. The first week of August camp, I asked Jonathan Smith about him. I think I asked Rossi also, because I was asking about players that were part of the program that they inherited that remained with the team but did not participate during spring practice. Specifically, Alex Van Sumeren, Brendan Parachek. I said, you guys saw them on film. You inherited them. They did not practice with you in the spring. They're on the field with you now. How do you feel about them? And we heard some good things about Parachek and Van Sumeren here and there, but never got the idea that Van Sumeren was knocking on the door to become a starter until all of a sudden, game number 1, there he is starting, number 91. And he's done a pretty good, solid job at it. I don't see him losing many battles. And as he continues to get entrenched, I think he's a star for the future. But you're right. There have been some pleasant surprises, and those are 2 of them, Rakeem Johnson, Ben and Alex Van Sumeren, and they need more from those guys going forward. Now the 38-7.
Jim,
go ahead.
Just for fun, real quick,
Yeah.
I looked up Rakeem Johnson's shot and disc, and he threw the shot 59.7 feet. Okay, anytime you reach 60, that's like elite. I mean, elite. And his discus, his personal best is over 200 feet, which is just, that's insane. Nobody has thrown that far in the state of Michigan, in over 10 years. Are
we sure? Is there a universal weight on these things? The discus and the shot?
I don't know. Maybe because the altitude is a little higher in Idaho, it goes a little further. I don't know, but his personal best in the shot was 201 feet. And like I said, in the discus. The discus was 201 feet, and I'm looking at the state records in Michigan. Are 195, 187, 200.4, 196. There is one person who threw it, 210, and that was in 2013. But nobody else is, So this guy was. And it did say when he threw 186 feet, there was a little, thing in the newspaper that said that was the 14th best throw in the nation that year. And that was 186 feet. And then he went out and threw it 201. So, it's kind of, pretty, he's in elite company there. And remember, I remember back in the day, that was a big deal with TJ Duckett. Remember, he threw the shot 64 feet, which was, kind of unheard of. He also ran the 100 meters, which, is sort of a very rare combination. But yes, from just a explosiveness and power standpoint, Johnson, is sort of, he's a top 1%, 1/10 of 1%, put it that way.
Could he run track at Michigan State? I don't know if they're in favor of that or not, but are those numbers that would be like a recruitable track athlete at the Big Ten level?
His discus would be, yeah. There's no doubt. Like I said, his discus. That one said that when he threw it 186 feet, it was 14th best in the nation at that point, and his personal record is 201. So, I'm just looking at the record here, and I could search the guy who has the record up. He probably went and is doing track right now, or did track in college. So
I want to ask you about Ohio State. Michigan State wins 38-7. After the game, I was like, I felt Michigan State played pretty well. I was encouraged by their performance. Something I posted on the board yesterday, the Underground Bunker message board. People talking about it being a blowout. And, people on the bunker are pretty optimistic about things too. And people are struggling with that final score. To me, football scoring can get a little misleading sometimes. 38-7 basically means 5.5 to 1. They scored 5.5 times. Michigan State scored 1. Michigan State eschewed a chance to get a field goal. They could have had 10 points if they wanted to. If they don't fumble those 2 times, they could have 16 points, with the Velling one and the Childs fumble. It could have been 38-16. If, Childs throws the one interception, correctable, sets that up 31-16. I know Ohio State shut it down and took the fourth quarter off, but basically that game was like a 41-20 type of game to me, or like a 4-2, 5-2 baseball game or a 5-2 hockey game. Yeah, it's a sound victory for Ohio State, but 38-7 sounds completely different. We've seen some 38-7 games at Michigan State over the years, both on the winning end and the losing end, and some of those can be some real serious bloodlettings, but this was not that case. And I thought Childs did some really good things in the first half. Pass protection with a new left tackle, your fifth different starting offensive line in 5 games. And also, Michigan State on defense contained the big plays for Ohio State. Ohio State drove and scored, and they finished in the red zone. But Ohio State prior to this against Marshall and Western Michigan and Akron. I know those teams are not great, but man, when they get a little crease, it's usually gone. 75 yards, gone, fight song, gone, fight song, gone, fight song, 55 yards, 68 yards, 86 yards. Joe Rossi, number one thing for him is stop big plays, stop the run. And probably Ohio State is one of the toughest teams in the country to try to do both of those things. And Michigan State did that. I understand Ohio State went for 490 yards, whatever it was. And if the game had been closer, maybe they would have went over 500 if they didn't shut it down in the fourth quarter. But Michigan State, they accomplished a lot of things on defense. The defensive tackles for Michigan State, you mentioned Van Sumeren. Daquan Dowse has been solid all year. Coming off the bench, Jalen Satchel and Ben Roberts for the first time. Those guys, they were taking on double teams against Ohio State, laden with 4- and 5-star guys that are going to be NFL players, and firm. I mean, you saw Ohio State 3rd and 1, stopped, 4th and 1, stopped, but they gave them the spot for a first down right at Michigan State, and Michigan State held firm with the score 24-7. Lesser Michigan State teams would have buckled, and they're doing it with second-team defensive tackles out there. When Jonathan Smith after the game said, "We battled," that wasn't just coach speak, cliche type of things. Michigan State did battle. And it's like Tom Izzo basketball or Nick Saban football. Do not play the score. Play the sport. Play your role. Play your assignment. Do it. Do it with firmness. Do it with physicality. Do it with a high motor. And these things were going on. That's what happened all the way to the end, regardless of the score. Those are great traits to be implemented as they get the program, the foundational stones laid on this program. 38-7. That was not a 38-7 game. It would be a shame if they had another blowout loss at Oregon, obviously. That would start to look really bad on the ledger. We'll have to wait and see what it looks like. But, I'm not ready to predict what's going to happen with the Oregon game yet. I'm going to watch some film tonight. But if they play like that, they're not losing 38-7 to anybody else.
No, I agree 100%. And like you said, some of these guys, on like Satchel and Roberts, they weren't sort of brought in with a lot of hype. That's one of the things that's been really, really nice to see is, when you brought in, all the guys that they've brought in from the transfer portal, they weren't, you hear about Ohio State bringing this guy in and Alabama's bringing this guy in and this high level guy here and there. And Michigan State quietly brought in just a very solid amount of good football players. The fact that there's so many of these guys that are in the rotation and played, and some guys have had to step up because of injuries. But, you look at what they did in the transfer portal, in pretty much a short time period. And not only that, it's not like they really had a lot to sell. I mean, the program was kind of in disarray when they took over. So I'll be interested to see this year moving forward, with the fact that, Jonathan Smith is with the program. He's sort of created his culture and starting to build the foundation, what they'll be able to do in the portal this year. Again, I don't expect them to be knocking around and grabbing the number one person here and the number one person there at this position or the top 5 guy here or there. But what they're going to do is they're going to get quality football players that they think, fit their system. And so that's really been, all these guys that they've brought in, whether it's been in the secondary, obviously there's been guys on the offensive line, there's been guys, obviously at linebacker, the defensive line, there's just a lot of these new guys that they brought in have been productive, solid football players. And they've also bought into what, the sort of the culture that he's trying to build, which is important as well, because, you got to be careful. You just can't bring in guys from all over the place and then expect them to sort of, mold together as a team. And I think, Coach Smith has done a good job of that, of sort of creating a, sort of that team and atmosphere and environment amongst a bunch of guys that, a year ago this time, most of them had no idea who each other were. So
It's amazing. I think it's been pretty good. You think about Mel Tucker, got a lot of credit in that first year for what they did in the portal. Of course, Kenneth Walker, but they had a lot of misses in the transfer portal.
That was the thing. There was, everybody got all excited about the Kenneth Walker, and everybody thought, well, this is, it kind of almost skewed things like that was going to be the norm. And, that was just, that was lightning in a bottle. That's a once in a, I don't want to say a generation type thing to get a guy like Kenneth Walker, but it almost is to get a guy that comes in and is able to basically single-handedly, turn the program, into such a powerful team. With that being said, I do look at it this way. One thing I do like to think about, when my dad and I talk about this quite a bit, that when Kenneth Walker was doing his thing, and we were talking about, obviously you still have Peyton Thorne down at Auburn. And, I think Peyton's getting sort of, destroyed down there at Auburn. They're not happy and everything. And that one game he threw 4 picks. I think only one of them was really his fault, to tell you the truth. But with that being said, that team had Jaden Reed at the one wide receiver. Receivers, as your, in addition to Kenneth Walker, in the backfield. So that team was basically, we didn't realize it then how good that team, was at those skill positions. Obviously it made Thorne look really good as well, but obviously most quarterbacks, you had to honor Kenneth Walker, and if you don't, those receivers were going to kill you. And but that was sort of a special group of players that obviously getting Kenneth Walker to the portal, but the other guys were already here.
Mm-hmm.
Naylor and Reed were guys that were holdovers from the previous staff. So, but yeah, I think you make a really an excellent point about just the difference. Tucker just seemed to be sort of going after, hey, this guy was a 4-star at Auburn, he hadn't played yet, but you know what?
Mm-hmm.
And then, well, hey, look at somebody like that compared to Wayne Matthews,
right?
And
they
a guy who comes.
And Tucker brought in I think at least 20, 22 players that first year, and got rid of a lot of players that I thought probably would have been serviceable players in the D'Antonio system, to bring in, like you said, 4-star guys that were high recruits at a blue blood program that were third string, and a Michigan State gets them because they fit the shirt, to reference an old Brady Bunch episode that I'm sure everybody watching is too young to remember. Jonathan Smith, with his staff, they identified people in a short amount of time. When you look at the hit rate, the evaluation, and like you said, these guys aren't coming in from Tennessee and Auburn. They're coming in from Georgia Tech, Old Dominion, Holy Cross, Oregon State, Wisconsin, North Dakota. Look at the 10. This is the 10 that they added from the portal in December. Quindarius Dunnigan, and he comes in, had a pretty good game against Boston College.
Boston College, played really well.
Yeah, didn't play as much the first couple of games, but that speaks to the guys that were playing in front of him. They were doing a pretty good job. But Dunnigan played a little bit more against Ohio State. Good, solid second-string defensive end. Useful. He's on the field. He's helping. Daquan Dowse, starting. Wayne Matthews, third down guy, valuable. Luke Newman, starting. Jack Velling, hasn't hit his stride yet, but he will. Jordan Turner, the big surprise of the season so far. Aiden Childs, Tanner Miller, long snapper Caden Schickel, and backup quarterback Tommy Schuster. Those are the 10. They hit on all 10. Then in the spring from the portal, Anthony Jones, Sam linebacker at Indiana, kind of a second-string guy. He's a passing down guy from Michigan State, doing a solid job. Getting some pass rush productivity, solid. Had a little bit of a leverage error against Ohio State, which allowed a running play to get out for, was that the play that got out for 30 yards? It got out for like 15 yards, I think. But other than that, he's been good. Ed Woods, starting, solid. Ruquan Buckley, third-string defensive tackle. He came in mop-up time against Ohio State, played 14 snaps, also played a few snaps against Prairie View. That guy's a house. He's a redshirt junior. A guy from the Grand Rapids area, went to Nebraska, didn't play much, kind of bounced around offensive line, defensive line, third and a half string. Michigan State brings him home. That guy he's not out of place when he's on the field. Ruquan Buckley's okay. Jeremiah Hughes got on the field a little bit. Was it game 2 when there were some injuries? Maybe the FAU game. On the field a little bit late in the game the other night. He's a third-string corner, second-string corner. He's around. Ben Roberts flashed the other night against Ohio State. That's a first, extended playing time he's ever had. What is he, 6'2", 320? Quick, strong, low. Sometimes there's one play when he was not the low man and was in the process of getting beat by a guy who's going to be an NFL draft pick, and he just bends and withstands it and holds his ground. Ben Roberts looked like a future star the other night, considering that's like the second time he's ever played. I was like, okay, there it is. I went back and watched him in the Oregon spring game, and he was just kind of okay, and because he was not at Michigan State in the spring, and then watched him, at practice in August, and he was kind of slow to come around. Maybe he was working hard to get his footwork down. I don't know. But the guy that played against Ohio State the other day can play against Ohio State. And he's got 3 more years of eligibility. If he uses the medal at Michigan State will be very happy about that. Jalen Satchel comes in from Old Dominion, passing down defensive tackle, second-string defensive tackle. Like I said, Satchel and Roberts as second-string defensive tackles after Hansen was hurt and out. 2 guys we'd never heard of before 10 months ago. Good, solid defensive tackles.
By the way, compare those 2 guys to the 2 defensive tackles brought in the previous year that were, Florida State and Auburn guys.
Jarrett Jackson from Florida State. And I looked at his film, and I told people here on this message board, this podcast, I said, don't really expect a lot from him. And he played maybe 5 snaps last year and didn't do much. Jalen Sami coming in from Colorado didn't do much. Jarrett, and then there was, who else was there? The guy from Liberty was actually okay. He was hurt in the third game.
He didn't play much, though.
He got hurt in the third game and was done and transferred to Charlotte, I think. And there was one other one. I'll look it up right now. But, yes, the defensive tackles they brought in last year.
You also mentioned Martinez. Obviously, they brought in Martinez late as well. As another
Nikai Martinez,
portal guy.
Kayron Lynch Adams, and A.J. Dennis is a true freshman, looking pretty good. The only ones that have not hit yet, there's only 4, and they're young still. Tyler Gillison has 3 years of eligibility, edge guy coming in from University of Cincinnati. Marcus Pulliam coming in from Miami. He was second-string linebacker in mop-up time, number 44. He can hit. He's a solid 239. I got to look to see a little bit more how well he runs sideline to sideline, but he played with a lot of motor. He can play for me. Pulliam can be on my team. And then we've not seen Legend Cavazos. I don't know what's going on with him. Saw him on the sideline. He was not in shoulder pads. He's not on the injury list. They'd moved him from corner to safety when there were some injury problems at safety. Just hasn't quite gotten on the field yet. Not a great sign, but we'll see. And the other one is Samaj Bridgman, the transfer from Michigan. So only 4 that have not hit yet. I'm going to say 3 haven't hit yet. I'm going to say Pulliam has hit because we saw him hitting Buckeyes the other night and doing just fine. Gillison, Cavazos, and Bridgman, out of 20, they've hit on 17 out of 20 in the portal last year. That's unbelievable. That's why they're a pretty good team with a chance to be better than pretty good, which no one would have thought was possible. There's 18 teams in the Big Ten. Michigan State was picked to come in 17th. And now we're wondering if they can compete with the number 6 team in the country on the road. What? And it's a fair question. Can Michigan State hang? Can they compete with the number 6 team in the country on the road? A team that was picked to finish 17 out of 18. The answer on August 10th should have been hell no way. But here we are on October 1st saying, so you say there's a chance. I mean, there's a guy on our message board, Marlowe, and he posted the same thing that I was thinking, that I said in the VCast. Michigan State hanging with Ohio State, they score, they're hanging, they get a stop, they get an interception, they're hanging. Then they're driving and they're down 17-7. They get down there to the 16-yard line. This is after Velling had already fumbled down there. And right when Childs fumbles at the 16, there's 3 minutes left in the first half. And I'm thinking they're about ready to score. They're about ready to cut this to 17-14. And I was already thinking in my head, they get the ball first in the second half, don't they? If they score here, they could have the lead on Ohio State in the third quarter. That's where they were right when Childs fumbled on that face mask penalty. I'm not saying they would have won. I'm saying, anytime you can take Mike Tyson at around 7, 8, 9, who knows what can happen. But that was progress. And again, for a team that was picked to finish 17th out of 18 in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, I was, like I said, I mean, it was one of the, it's one of the, and I think, some people, I think I saw a movie, post something like this, and, it was one of those games where it was so frustrating, but you were also, you felt good at the same time.
Yeah.
Because it was frustrating that they had blown these chances, but you also felt good because, you obviously could see the progress and you could see the fact that this team, deserved to be on the same field as Ohio State, which in previous years that has not been the case. It was just like, you turned the TV off and you went out and started doing, chores around your house or something, at the end of the first quarter, because you're just like, hey, I'm done with this, and that wasn't the case. So even though the score was, wasn't what we wanted, and, but it was one of those situations where it was definitely frustrating, but you also felt good. So it was kind of a, it was a strange feeling watching a game, that's for sure.
Let me give you some specifics. You know how sometimes I get into the minutia and I go play by play and some people get bored with it, but I can't help it. You know what I'm talking about? I'm going to get in some specifics. You want to stay with me for this for a minute? You want some specifics?
Sure.
All right, here we go. Specifics. You know, when you go back and you watch the game again, some things jump out to you that are positive that you didn't necessarily recognize at the time. And some things are worse than you thought at the time. And the part that was more impressive to me the second time around that I didn't really notice the first time around, and I mentioned this on the VCast today outside Perlis Plaza, and it gets to what Jonathan Smith was talking about after the game. He said that, when asked what he thought about the team, he said, we battled. And like I said, that's not that sounds like a coach speak, sounds like a cliche, but I'm going to tell you about battling. Here it is. Okay. So Michigan State goes into halftime. They're down 24-7. And Michigan State got the ball first to begin the second half, and it didn't go well. They got one first down, and then on 1st and 10, Brandon Baldwin gave up a 4-yard tackle for loss. And we talked about this at the Perlis Plaza also. It's an outside zone, and the defensive tackle for Ohio State's a good player, a guy that I mentioned, the pre-snap read, that is the real deal. He's a 3-star guy out of Pickerington, Ohio. But I said he was the real deal in pre-snap read, and he was real deal on this play. I think he knew the play was coming anyway. Sometimes when there's a negative play, sometimes the quarterback is supposed to flip it and run the play to the other side. Michigan State is in the process of getting better at that as well. So anyway, loss of 4, 2nd and 14, then an incompletion, 3rd and 14, then a near interception, and all of a sudden the opening drive did not go well for Michigan State. Ohio State gets the ball back. They're leading 24-7. They've got momentum, and Ohio State saddles up to establish the run with 2 running backs that are going to be in the NFL. Judkins and Henderson. These guys are good. This offensive line, full of veterans. Good players. A couple of them going to be in the NFL. They think they're elite on the left tackle and left guard side. Receivers, at least 2 of those guys going to be in the NFL. So it's kind of, you kind of have to keep 2 safeties deep a lot. Sometimes run blitzes and cover 3, but there's problems all over the field. And you have to honor those, which sometimes scares the defense out of the box. That's another reason these running backs are so explosive. So Ohio State saddles up to run 24-7. And they run an outside zone. Michigan State is solid on an outside zone. Halliday doing a good job setting the edge and not leaving his man this time. Like, he left his man during that key play against Boston College. They got out and down the sideline for about a 36-yard touchdown. We talked about that last week in the VCast. Did not talk about it here because we didn't have the show last week because I was a little under the weather. But remember the 36-yard run against Boston College that it was out to the left sideline, and looked like it was stopped. It looked like it was stopped, and all of a sudden he's loose and goes down to the sideline for a touchdown. It was one of 2 explosive plays. Remember that play?
Yeah.
On that play, Cal Halliday, it's to the short side. It's a sweep to the short side, and he's got one of the he's basically one of the end men on the line of scrimmage, and he takes on a pulling guard. So he's at a weight disadvantage, but he hits him well, hits him strong, and he's withstanding it. He's doing a good job, and that's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to just stand there and hold that, and I verified this with some people on the inside. And instead, he disengages because the running back kind of cuts the other way, and he turns his back, and he kind of loses the ball, and he ends up running into Malik Spencer. And he sets a block on Malik Spencer. Spencer is scraping over the top. He's got a good angle. He's going to make the tackle. But Halliday leaves his man to go do another man's job. You know what I mean? They always talk about coaches always say, just do your job. Don't try to do someone else's job. In football, with gap integrity and everything, if you try to do someone else's job, invariably you might leave a gap unhosted, and that's where the daylight is and the ball goes through there. Or you might run friendly fire interference for a teammate, which is what happened here. And Cal Halliday, everybody loves him. Good kid. He's sacrificed a lot and given everything he can for the program. I'm not saying he's the greatest player in the world, but you can't question his commitment and his want to. But that was kind of a rookie play a little bit. A rookie in this system. He's not a rookie, but he went disengaged, ended up blocking his teammate, and it gets out. This play, Halliday doesn't leave his assignment. He stays, sets the edge, not leaving his man this time. They get a stop. Now it's 2nd and 3. We got 4 wide receivers, 5 offensive linemen. Michigan State's got 6 in the box, 1 safety deep. So in this play, they do have an extra man. They've got 1 man for each gap. Van Sumer takes on number 77, holds firm, crosses his face, and goes to the ball. Dowse, he's firm against his blocker. Judkins is the running back, and he's stopped for no gain, but he kind of manages to squirm for at the last moment for 2 yards. They stopped him, and he kind of just squirms out of it for fall forward yards. Now it's 3rd and 1. Quarterback sneak, they pick it up at the 33-yard line. So those 3 yards were difficult. and it should have been a little longer, but he kind of squirms. But the defensive tackles had that thing stopped. All right, now it's 1st and 10. Outside zone. This time, Anthony Woods, good job setting the edge at the point of attack. Anthony Jones, good job setting the edge on that one. Ed Woods, the corner, good job taking on the tight end and setting the edge. Both those guys set the edge. How the physicality of your defense a lot of times is determined by the physicality of your corners. And here, Ed Woods taking on a tight end and firm and setting the edge, sending the ball back to the middle. Ben Roberts and Jalen Satchel inside, get penetration on the zone blockers, limiting the running back's choices. Judkins makes a cut. Jordan Turner scraping over the top. Malik Spencer with the assist. Gain of 1. 2nd and 9 to the 37. Next play, outside zone to the weak side of the field. Quindarius Duggan, decent job, gets the right tackle. Halliday may have gotten held on this play. It gets out for 7 yards. Spencer makes the tackle. Might have been a flag. Should have been a flag, maybe. So now it's they gain 7. It's 3rd and 1. Getting tired at their own 55-yard line, inside zone. Jordan Turner comes on a run blitz. Satchel, firm, he's low. Anthony Jones, adding support to the pile. No gain on 3rd and 1. It's talking about battling, 3rd and 1. Now it's 4th and 1, 45-yard line, 9 minutes go in the third quarter, 24-7. Michigan State quitting, buckling? No. Ohio State's testing them with the run, and Michigan State's passing these tests. 4th and 1, 9 minutes to go. 2 safeties deep. It's 24-7. You can see they're a little bit worried about a play action deep shot on 4th and 1. So they're not even stacking the box on this one. 2 safeties deep. Michigan State defensive front. They slant to the strong side. Ben Roberts, second string defensive tackle, in there firm. Jordan Turner in there, the B gap, firm. Halliday dodges a blocker, and gets in there and helps. And this is the one where Roberts played a little bit too high against 71 and initially got bent back, but Roberts had like the physical strength to withstand it and remain firm without good technique. That's where I'm like, Roberts, dang. 4th and 1, and they get a favorable spot. The Spartan Stadium crowd booed. They thought that they got a stoppage on that one. Maybe he got it by an inch. We never really saw a good replay on that one. Thanks, Peacock. But 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, right there. They're hanging right in there. 1st and 10, they go outside zone again. This time, Jalen Thompson. They got the starters back in. Decent job setting the edge. Halliday dodges the center's block, kind of leaves his gap to backdoor it, and gets and makes a tackle for a gain of 1. So you're talking like 6 or 7 straight plays. Gain of 2 on 2nd and 3. Quarterback sneak for 3 yards. Gain of 1. Gain of 7 when Halliday was held. 3rd and 1, no gain. 4th and 1, no gain. 1st and 10, gain of 1. These are 6 straight consecutive running plays. Now they get a holding penalty. Now it's 1st and 20, and then the play that kind of stopped, that kind of screwed everything up. They fumble the snap. I don't know if you remember this one. They fumble the snap, and by this time, Justin Denson's on the field, true freshman safety, and Henderson gets outside for a gain of 8. See, Denson sees the fumble and bites forward a little bit too far, and then he's chasing Henderson,
right,
who's got a lot of speed. Denson's still a freshman. Henderson's got great speed. So the tackling angle, he learned a little bit of a lesson there. Tackling angle against some of these speed guys, gets out for a gain of 8. And then it gets to 2nd and 14, and that's when they pick up the 2nd and 14. So now it's not a running play anymore, and Ohio State goes to the air, single safety deep, man-to-man. So Michigan State played mostly zone, but on this one, man-to-man with 2 linebackers playing zone coverage underneath. And Egbuka is the number 3 receiver, the 3rd receiver from the sideline, an inside receiver. So your outside receiver is going to be on Woods or Chuck Brantley. Your second guy, maybe if you bring corners over, by the time you get to your 3rd guy, you've got like your slowest safety on a 3rd guy. So it's man-to-man, and they come out 3-by-1, and it's Egbuka against Amarion Smith. Amarion Smith has a lot of challenges and so forth. Maybe not the fastest defensive back. Time to throw, 4-man rush. He reads man-to-man, so you find your dragster on a crossing route, and he's not going to run with him. Throws to actually on an out route, Egbuka, gain of 16. So the 1st and 20, they get the first down. Then they score on 4th down a little bit later. But in terms of passing a test of strength, remember the old pro wrestling days when they do the Ivan Putski and Jesse Ventura, the test of strength out there in the squared circle? Some of the old people, you remember when that was like good entertainment, the test of strength? Well, Michigan State was challenged by Ohio State to a test of strength right there, the 24/7 game with run play, and repeatedly Michigan State's run defense was good, and that will serve them well against Michigan and Iowa when the time comes.
Yeah, it's a great point. And like you said, I mean, as far as, when you have your, not even your starting safety lining up versus, their number 3 wide receiver. And we all know that Ohio State's number 3 wide receiver will more than likely be a first-round draft pick, knowing the way they've been pumping wide receivers into the NFL as of late. I mean, it's just, there's a mismatch right there.
Yeah, and he's actually their second best receiver, but they lined him up as the number 3 inside to force that matchup. You can maybe switch it up and stuff, but yeah, to your point, they went to a matchup and they got it in man to man.
Yeah. Now I have a question, Jim, and maybe this is just something that people on the board and I was just thinking about today. They might want to know. Obviously there's some guys on the team that. I don't know how things work with like the COVID year and as far as eligibility and with NIL now. I mean, like I'm just looking at a kid, like Luke Newman, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at him and it's on the Michigan State website. It says 5th year. It says graduate transfer from Holy Cross, has 1 year of eligibility remaining.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it says.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking, in 2020, he was at Holy Cross,
mm-hmm.
and it says he appeared in 3 contests as a reserve offensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the COVID year, which is not supposed to count anyway.
Right.
And of course, I'm just wondering, are there some guys on the program that, one of the things that Ohio State has done, people talk about all the money that Ohio State has spent with NIL. They spent a lot of money. Most of the money they spent was to keep guys that are already in their program from going to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they did. I mean, they did get the guy from, the safety from Alabama and the running backs as well, I think from Ole Miss and stuff. So they did spend some money in the portal. But where most of their money was spent was keeping guys from going to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I'm wondering about with some of these guys at Michigan State. You have some guys that might be 5th-year guys or redshirt seniors. And because of COVID, that COVID year is not supposed to be counting, and I wonder if it's possible that Michigan State might be able to keep some of these players that we originally thought, hey, they're one and done or they're getting ready to graduate, but that's something that I guess it's just something we won't be able to really find until after the season.
I don't know, man. The NCAA, they change rules every week. So Newman played in 2021. 2021 is not considered like a COVID waiver year, right? Just 2020 is, right?
Right.
Okay. So, they could change it next week. I don't think they will. But it's my understanding that Newman will be done after this year. So I don't know about some of these others. So I'm not sure. Man, I'm really weak on the rules. There have been so many in the last few years that I can't even I can't keep up with some of the things.
Well, I mean, hey, God bless the kid, but I mean, you got the kid at Miami who's on his 9th year or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if you know.
Yes.
I know the kids had a lot of injuries and things like that, but
that's not supposed. It's not supposed to work that way. It was never supposed to work quite like that. Good for him, but you used to be able to get 1 injury, maybe 2, but I don't know how you get 9 years. Anyway.
Yeah, right, but that is one of the things that just real quick about the the offensive linemen. Obviously, Michigan State is playing these young guys on the offensive line, which bodes well. I mean, the whole idea is that, the old rule of thumb is that, if you want an offensive line to be good, you need 2 out of every 3 offensive linemen to hit to be, contributors. And, they only got 2 offensive linemen in the 2023 class. They took 6 offensive linemen last year. Jonathan Smith took 6 offensive linemen. And, it's still early, but it's looking, if I'm a betting man and somebody says, hey, 4 out of 6 are going to be contributors, I'm going to take the over because I think 4 is a push and I think it's possibly 5, obviously of these offensive, and that's how you end up, really building the program, in the trenches, so to speak. If you can, have 5 out of the 6 offensive linemen that you took this past year end up being, you got obviously you have the twins and you have Johnson and you have Dennis and, so there's just, that's something to be really optimistic about. Plus you have 2 guys that are injured this year that are out for the year that are going to be coming back as well next year. So, the glass could be sort of half full there at the offensive line, down the line, maybe not next year, but, the year after that, when these guys are in their 3rd year in the program, it could be we're back to that point where Michigan State has the type of offensive line that, we got sort of used to for the first couple of years under the D'Antonio era with Dan Rochar, when you had guys like, Conklin and Allen and, all those other guys and Dan France and, And, so that's just something I was thinking about today, is trying to look at, the positives of the offensive line moving forward, especially with this class of, recruiting class of 2024.
Yeah, Jim Comparoni, the offensive line coach, good job producing NFL players last year. Oregon State had a first-round choice offensive tackle. He knows what he wants them to look like, and I suspect he's going to build it over the course of time really successfully. Rustin Young, part of that class. Peyton Stewart's been a little banged up, part of this class. The Lunyeski brothers, haven't seen them, but I thought they looked pretty good in the spring. I asked Mahalchik about them last week, and he said, Charlton just still look kind of young, not quite ready yet. And then Rakeem Johnson's the fifth one, and then Newman, the transfer. So those were the 6 offensive linemen that they brought in, and then that was without knowing that. Vandermark was going to be leaving, and they'd already lost Wigginton. So,
they also got the Peyton Stewart kid too, as well.
Peyton Stewart,
so
yeah.
They bring it,
yeah, he's been
brought,
injured. Stewart,
that's 7 altogether.
Oh, who did I miss then? There's Rustin Young, Peyton Stewart, the Lunieskis makes 4. Rakeem Johnson makes 5. Joel Newman makes 6. Was there another one?
Fincher makes 7. Dennis makes 7.
Oh, A.J. Dennis. Okay, sure. Yeah, all right. Yep. Sure, that's right. So anyway, I appreciate you checking in, Matt. It's always good to hear from you. Thanks for your insight, and we'll be talking to you soon. All right, sound good, man?
Okay, thanks again, Jim.
All right, there
Take
you go.
care.
All right,
Bye-bye.
You too. It was Matt Dorsey. It's good to hear from him. Let's go back to the questions. I'm still on question number 1. Doc Spartan in Las Vegas, talking about the freshmen. And, are they more disciplined? What are their ceilings? Well, the freshmen that have played so far, on a regular basis, of course, Nick Mars, high ceiling, you see him. Rakeem Johnson, high ceiling, for sure, just getting started. And the question is, what are their ceilings? Is it mostly coaching or talent? Maybe both. It's going to be both coaching and talent with Rakeem Johnson. Andrew Dennis got on the field a little bit, looks pretty good. I watched him in the Illinois spring game. It was just kind of okay, which is understandable. He'd only been on campus for a couple months. Hard to judge a true freshman in the spring game, but I watched it. And from what I've seen so far, when he's gotten on the field in mop-up time, it looks like he's got a chance. He's not ready yet. He's played 2 games, 4 snaps, still young. Rustin Young, 1 game, 19 snaps against Ohio State, struggled. Brady Pretzlaff, saw him against Prairie View, looked good. Looked smooth and natural as an inside linebacker, straight out of Central Casting. Did not play last week. The word I understand, there's a plan for him to redshirt. So unless there's injuries down the road, so played 1 game. So he could have played against Ohio State, but they shut it down. They put Sam Edwards out there, walk on, a good leader on the team from East Lansing. Got to play a lot. Good for him. Justin Denson's played 2 games, 35 snaps, played a lot against Ohio State, and like Jonathan Smith said on Monday, he's going to be playing. So Denson, I think the red shirt's coming off. I think he's going to be playing. I think he's second-string safety. He's in there. Andrew Brinson, 2 games, 20 snaps, corner. Tried to throw his nose into the fan a couple times. He looked like a teenager, looked a little light a couple times. There'll be a decision with him after they get to 4 games about redshirting or not. Just continues to compete. As he competes, does everybody stay healthy? If everybody stays healthy, they'll probably have the luxury of redshirting him. Mike Schonbeeler, 3 snaps against Prairie View, a guy we heard a lot about at the outset of preseason camp, defensive tackle, another defensive tackle from Chicago, Simeon High School. There's good defensive linemen in the Chicago area. Trust it. Mike Schonbeeler, late addition to the recruiting class, was injured at the beginning of the year. Missed some camp, got on the field for 3 snaps against Prairie View. I wanted to go back and watch him. I didn't actually see him. That's probably worth going back and watching again. I'll have to check that out at some point. Kakai Burnett out of Honolulu, 5 snaps against Prairie View. Probably going to redshirt. Beeler probably going to redshirt. Jalen Thompson, 18 snaps against Prairie View. Safety, I'm guessing, probably going to redshirt. Brandon Tullis, 2 games, 9 snaps. Had 1 carry against Ohio State. Got stopped for a loss. The left tackle, Rustin Young kind of got beat on that play, and that's what caused Tullis to get folded up there. Mekhi Frazier, the other running back out of Texas, 2 games, 8 snaps. Caught a pass. Was it a pass? Yeah, a little impromptu flip late in the game against Ohio State when you guys weren't watching anymore. Frazier catches it and looked like a running back, running low, made someone miss, fall forward yardage. Frazier looking good. And I wasn't sure about him coming out of Texas. His senior year, his film was mainly linebacker. He was like a second-string running back on that team. Committed to Oregon State before his senior year. You go look at his film, there's not a lot there in terms of the running back position. So I was kind of like, man, I don't know about that guy. But he looked okay on that play. As far as the others, we've not seen yet. Austin Clay, wide receiver, traveled to Boston College, didn't play. Had a lot of injuries at wide receiver, so he dressed and was ready but didn't play. Keyshawn Williams, corner out of Tennessee, hasn't played. Tight end Wyatt Hook, a guy whose film I really, really liked, has not played yet. Michigan State seems to be okay at tight end. I think Wyatt Hook had a little bit of a ding in camp too, so I'm not sure if he's ready, but that guy's got talent, catch radius, range. If he's got everything else in terms of determination and he's got heart and tenacity and all those things, if he's got those and stays healthy, he's going to be a player, but he's not playing now. The two quarterbacks, of course, Rylan Jesse, Alessio Milivojevic, they're not playing. Peyton Stewart's been a little dinged up. He's not playing. The Lenieski brothers, not playing. And wide receiver Jalen Brown, he's not playing either. Just went through all the freshmen. In terms of their ceilings, still hard to get a look at it, but Nick Marsh, Rakeem Johnson looking really good right now. Pretzlaff looking good for the future. Justin Denson looking good for the future. Mike Sean Beeler looking good for the future. We'll know more later. Question 2, Mike from West Palm Beach, Florida says, I asked the board a question a couple of months ago before the season started. Question, what would happen first? Which of these two things would happen first? And I'll invite you over in the comments area to give your thought on this as well. This is from Mike in West Palm Beach. Which happens first? The Michigan State football team has a 9-3 season, or Tom Izzo's Michigan State basketball team has another Final Four appearance. What happens first? Final Four basketball or 9-3? By the way, it's Michigan State Madness on Friday. Not Midnight Madness. They're doing it earlier, 6 o'clock on Friday. Going to go through a basketball program, get you in, get you out, go watch football. There's going to be some football viewing on the Munn Field as well. So they're doing it earlier. A little different spin on things, but that's Michigan State Madness. Friday, Breslin Center, free. Bring your kids. Set your DVR and then go back and watch the rest of the football game. You might miss kickoff. It's okay. Get in, get out. It'll be fun. What's going to happen first? Mike from West Palm Beach says, quote, I was bullish on Jonathan Smith and Aiden Childs from the jump, even more so now. So I picked our football team to go at least 9-3 before we went to another Final Four in basketball. He says, I'd like to know your answer to that question, please, unquote. Whew. That's a good question, man. You know, back when I remember when you posed that question on Underground Bunker message board. Excuse me, that's gross. Should hit the cough button. Apologize. I'm kind of unprofessional on these things. When you posed that question, I was bullish on Jonathan Smith as well, but I thought Final Four, more of a chance of that. Now, I think 9-3 in general is easier than a Final Four. And I started to type in an answer here, and I said I thought it was straight up 50-50, because I think Izzo will go to another Final Four. But it needs to be soon. And I think 9-3 for Michigan State football is a possibility as early as next year. That's what I said. Question 3, Desert Sparty from Arizona says, UCLA went at Oregon cornerback Nico Reed all night and had some success. Do you think Michigan State will test him as well? All right. Yeah, probably. Firstly, at Boston College, Michigan State did go at a weakness at the corner position. And it was a weakness that I said in the pre-snap read was a weakness. It was that guy by the name of Husky. And he was first team All-Mid-America Conference, I think, at Kent State. Which normally I would say is a good sign. If you're all conference at the mid-major level, by all means, looks like it would be a good get for Boston College or some other team. I don't know, but I watched him against Missouri, and I was like, man, I don't know. Just kind of like the hip turn wasn't real, and he was giving up separation. I said, keep an eye on that guy. Michigan State went at him. However, he was the guy that got that interception in the end zone when Aiden Childs, at the end of the game, the ill-advised 1st and 10 from the 40-yard line or wherever that was. But Husky gave up some plays that day. So I think Michigan State is of the pro-style mentality that if they see a matchup edge, they will attack it, and they will attack it, and they will attack it. Is Nico Reed in that category? I've not watched film of him yet. I'll take your word for it. I appreciate you bringing some intel and some scouting reports to us here at SpartanMag Live out there from Arizona. Desert Sparty. Talking about Nico Reed, corner for the Ducks. Nico Reed, 5'10", senior from Oakland, California. Interestingly, now he signed with Colorado in 2021. And who was the corners coach at Colorado in 2021? Demetrius Martin. Then he transferred to Oregon. And who was the corners coach at Oregon at the time? Demetrius Martin. So Demetrius Martin knows this guy, and he's believed in him a couple of times. So he may not have the same opinion of him that you do. But Nico Reed was targeted 4 times last week, 4 receptions, gave up 50 yards with a long of 23. Gave up a total of 9 yards after the catch. I got that from Pro Football Focus. That's not my own information. I did not research that. Thank you to PFF for that. He had 2 starts last year, and he was a 3-star recruit. Nico Reed, I'll be keeping an eye on that. Thank you for the post. Question number 3, Bing Bong from Pellston, Michigan says, football recruiting seems to be asleep at the wheel. Is this normal to have zero buzz heading into October? It does not feel like much is happening. Got another question about that down here. Let me go down there to it. Question 7, Fry from Chicago. He says, do you think the talent disparity on the field will be an eye-opener from a recruiting perspective for Jonathan Smith and his staff? Eye-opener, no. They knew that Ohio State was supremely talented. And as far as what they've seen in the past at Oregon State, they've seen strong teams before. Anything at that level, maybe not. But they played against Washington last year, and Washington was pretty darn good, right? Skill all over the place, good enough at the line of scrimmage. So they probably figured that's what it was all about. Fry from Chicago goes on to say, as mentioned above, this is the quietest fall official visit season I've ever seen. I know we are limited on spots for 2025, but one would think the staff would shoot for the stars for the final spots. Seems like the staff will continue targeting flips from Bierman, Dotson, Wynn, etc. Would love your perspective. Okay. It's my understanding Michigan State's got room for about 6 or 7 more players for the 2025 class. I think they've got, 17 commitments right now, maybe 18, 17, something like that. There have been some new offers coming through this fall. I want to talk to Jason Gilp about that. I wanted to have him on the show, but I was not able to connect with him, so I wasn't able to get him on the show, so we'll see what he has to say about this moving forward. I was told to keep an eye on things in the fall, that after the staff got a look at initial high school film, the first 3 or 4 games of the senior season, or maybe the junior season, as it were, more offers would go out. And we have seen offers go out. So offers are going out September based on the latest film that's out there. 2025s, I agree, a little bit quiet. But they're not just going to fill shirts to fill shirts. Is it less than usual? Let's go back and look at recent happenings. In 2021, most of the official visits were in June, and there were only 2 official visits in the fall. Zion Young in November, and then Malcolm Jones in December. So really in 2021, there was only 1 visit in the fall, and that was Zion Young. Back before COVID, the most recent year was 2019, and Cole DeMarzo, there were 3 visits in the fall. Cole DeMarzo in September, Cal Halliday in October with a late offer, Noah Kim in October with a late offer. Those 3 in the fall in 2019. So 3 in 2019 and 1 in 2020 and 2021. So by Michigan State standards, it's not unusual for this number for no official visits in the fall. Why? Because now official visits have really slanted to May and June in the summer. And the fall season, if someone comes in for an official visit in the fall, I've heard a lot of coaching staffs talk about, it's official visit, but we really don't get to spend a lot of time with the kid because we're kind of coaching a football game. And depending on if you win or you lose, then they're out with the players after the game. So the amount of time on an official visit during the fall with a coaching staff is minimal. So some coaching staffs would rather have the guy come in so they can really get to know the player better. And also if you want a better shot at him, it's in different times of the season. So I've not done the math on it, but I suspect across the board, across the country, there are fewer official visits in the fall than there used to be because a lot of official visits are in the summer now. And maybe you can squeeze in some November, December, maybe, but a lot of that has to be done earlier. That being said, they've got room for 7 scholarships. So in the meantime, there are a lot of juniors that have come in for unofficial visits to watch the games and so forth. Let's go back up here to the questions. Let's go here to the comments, see what's going on with the comments. I know there's not a lot of comments today because it's a busy night in the world. Clark Marier checking in from Sylvania, Ohio. Eric M. checking in from Knoxville, Tennessee. Hope everything's safe and sound in Knoxville. I know that's right on the edge of all the problems there. Hope you're okay. Desert Party says, hey, Comp. Ellison B918 checking in from Fayetteville, Georgia. Same to you. I hope you're safe and warm and well, and yours, all of yours. Desert Sparty. Duck hunting on Friday night. Desert Sparty is. In the desert you are? I don't think so. Oh, I hear what you're saying. Oregon duck hunting. Gotcha. Nick says, I like these weeknight ones. Worst case scenario, I watch it over coffee the next day. Not a bad scenario, Nick. Thank you. $5 Tommy says, how's that Hoop Squad looking? Hoop Squad. Michigan State basketball. Coach Tom Izzo, you may have heard of him. Well, let's see. All right. Someone told me that there's no sound. Let me know if the sound is on, if it's working now. You know, it should be working now. Let me know. We'll pause here for a second. So when I played that basketball video, and I noticed the basketball video when I had it on before, there's no sound from the gym in there. You know, the sound of just the ambient sound of the gymnasium as they're practicing. And it's good to have some of that sound going on. So now, so the sound is working again, Nate? All right, so it's working. All right, good. Thank you. Thank Mike. Appreciate checking in. Mike, I don't think Mike minds me saying Mike O'Brien. Thanks to you. Great to hear from you. When I put that video, that basketball video in, you couldn't hear the sound of the basketball taking place, the ambient noise of a basketball court, the squeak of the sneakers, basketball shoes, just basketball noise. And I was like, why is that going on? And I ran it through again. And I was like, oh, well, we'll just run the video. But somehow that also took away my audio, unbeknownst to me. So I'm not surprised that happened. I'm not sure why that happened. But thank you for chiming in. So let's go back. Because what you guys missed is I took those 4 minutes and I explained exactly how they built the pyramids and Stonehenge, but I can't repeat it again because I can't remember. But I had it nailed. Lost to history now. But the question was from. All right, we went back. I got to go back about 3 questions now. Question Bing Bong from Pellston, Michigan. Football recruiting seems to be asleep at the wheel. Is this normal to have zero buzz heading into October? It does not feel like much is happening. And then I talked about recruiting visits. Yeah, I got you. It was totally quiet, so I'm not sure why that happened. You know, there was an update for the application for this app, and somehow in the update, maybe it went screwy on some of that stuff. I'll have to test that later. Anyway, did I answered this question earlier, but it might have been when the sound wasn't working. Bing Bong from Pellston, Michigan. Football recruiting seems to be asleep at the wheel. Is this normal to have zero buzz heading into October? It does not feel like much is happening. Let me ask you, I answered the question before, but I don't know if you heard me or not. Did you hear it? Do you want me to answer that question? Football recruiting seems to be asleep at the wheel. Is this normal to have zero buzz heading into October? Let me know if you want me to answer that question. I'll wait. The question after that was from Mullen Lobby from Gladwin, Michigan. He says, can you please put the Childs getting benched for Schuster debate to bed? I answered that question also, but that might have been when everything was on mute. Do you want me to answer that question? Let me know. I'll wait. It's about a 45-second delay for you guys to hear me. All right, you heard that part of it. Okay. Jay Bannon from Sterling Heights said there are a number of posters that feel Michigan State basketball program will fall short in the recruiting of top talent during this cycle. How do you see this next recruiting class coming together? I take it you did not hear my answer on that one. Let me know in the comments area. You said you did not hear which one. You did not hear the one about football seems to be asleep at the wheel. Didn't hear that one. It's Desert Spartan. You're talking about the Childs one? Wasserman says we heard the Bing Bong one. Do you want to hear about the football? You did hear about you heard about the football recruiting one. You know, there was a short answer on the Childs one. The question is, can you please put the Childs getting benched for Schuster debate to bed? I thought Childs played excellent for a quarter and a half, says Mullen Lobby from Gladwin, against the league competition, he says, and it took a half step in the right direction. Can you please put that to bed, that argument to bed? My answer is I'm not the official put debates to bed guy. You have to do that on your own. But Schuster didn't look as good in this game as he did against Prairie View for obvious reasons. So that's my Childs one. Yeah, I know when the sound went out, Gerald, and I appreciate the post. I just can't remember what I talked about while the sound was out. So the Childs one. I'll repeat the football one real quick. It's just I went back, there's also Fry from Chicago said, do you think the talent disparity on the field? You did hear the football recruiting one. Okay, we're not going to repeat that one. Basketball recruiting. You didn't hear what I said about Cam Ward and Jordan Scott, right? Let me know if you heard what I said about Cam Ward and Jordan Scott. I'll wait. Probably did not. Sorry that this has gone off the rails like this, but it's primitive. I don't have much of a production staff here. And we are commercial free. So let's see who posts next. Probably going to be Desert Sparty. Or Gerald. Well, I'm going to go ahead and repeat it anyway. The question, Jay Bannon from Sterling Heights. He says there are a number of posters that feel Michigan State basketball program will fall short in the recruiting of top talent during this recruiting cycle. How do you see this next recruiting class coming together? Did not hear about it. Okay. Michigan State has lost some recruiting battles. They had 9 official visits this fall scheduled. Not all 9 have come for visits yet. That's more than usual because the recruiting is more of a scattershot situation. It's harder for coaches to know exactly where they stand with recruits these days. And NIL does come into it. How much are you going to pay? And truthfully, it's pretty much legalized now, but it's not 100% sure that it's legalized. So there's a little bit of trepidation there. But Michigan State backed off on a couple recruits. They went after the Adams kid who committed to UConn, Jersey kid who stayed out east. Michigan State liked him. UConn's pretty strong. Didn't get that one. But the guys coming to visit this weekend for Michigan State Madness, Cam Ward and Jordan Scott, they want these two. They want Cam Ward really bad. Cam Ward's been A-plus list. It's a guy Izzo's liked from the beginning. Harrelson they liked, the kid who committed to Notre Dame. Notre Dame threw a lot of money around. Plus, word on the street is that Notre Dame told him he could play point guard. That's a promise Michigan State couldn't make. I'm not sure he is a point guard, but on the recruiting trail, things like that can be effective. Style of play, this and that. But Cam Ward is a guy that's got some Izzo toughness. Izzo really likes him. They've made that clear. 6'6", 190, small forward, Upper Marlboro, Largo, Maryland, number 54 player in the country. Took an official visit to Kansas State September 13th. Official visit to Maryland, nearby school, September 21st. He'll be at Michigan State this weekend for the camp out. They won't actually camp out. The players don't. He'll be there for Michigan State Madness. But Izzo was asked today if the players have ever camped out of that thing. And Izzo said, maybe we should. And it was as if Izzo had never considered that before. Now, Izzo's a pretty good actor sometimes, so I don't know if he was just gaslighting on that one. But he kind of had a twinkle in his eye like that might be a good thing. Like he'd never thought of that before. I don't know. I'm not a basketball coach, but it sounds like it'd be a good idea to me. If you have a little area where only the players camp out, of course you have to give them tents and got to be good tents, but let them try to put up a tent, right? I'm sure a lot of them can. It's a bonding experience. I don't know. I'm not a coach. I'm not a basketball coach, Division I. But I remember back in the Draymond Green days, they were having a little trouble with the team chemistry. And so I was like, what should we do about this? And Draymond, I think, was a sophomore. And he's like, I think we should all spend the night at Breslin one night. I guess they did that at Saginaw High one time. So I was like, okay. And I guess they all did. They, people slept in the court, in the offices, and they just spent the night there that night. And Izzo thought it worked out pretty good. I don't know. Cam Ward's going to be there for all of this. He's taken other official visits to Florida State, Marquette, Vanderbilt. They're pretty much out of it. Looks like it's, Michigan State, Kansas State, Maryland. Been hearing some stuff about maybe Virginia getting back in there, but Michigan State's going strong for this guy. They want him pretty bad. So if you want someone pretty bad, what are you going to do in terms of the money situation? Also, I think, there's a theory out there that if you just kind of just throw money at everybody and he goes the Steinbrenner route, that doesn't always work either. I mean, look at Kentucky in recent years. When I say the Steinbrenner route, if you're too young, Steinbrenner used to throw a lot of money at a lot of teams, always had the highest payroll, and they went a lot of years without winning much. But they did win some, of course. California Angels. Are they the California Angels? What are they called now? Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim? Whatever. They've paid a lot of money to players. Couldn't hold on to Ohtani, but could never get over 500. It's going to be interesting to see if that's going to be the case in football and basketball in the college game. The teams that pay the most, what does that do? does that stress team camaraderie? I don't know. Ohio State's paying a lot to keep some of their players, and then they add some players here and there. Remains to be seen. It's going to be an intriguing exercise to see which college basketball programs do the best job of getting good and staying good. Everybody thought Florida State was home free with the way they hit the portal, right? They were great last year. And then this year, I think you might see more of that. It's going to be hard for a given coach in either sport to get good and stay good because of the volatility. Because you have to get the portal, and there's going to be some times when the portal bites you back. Just a theory. I don't know. We've not seen it. We don't have enough of a track record on these things yet. But Cam Ward, Michigan State likes him. There'll be some expense there. Jordan Scott, they like him too. 6'6", 6'7", 180. He's growing. Shooter. Reston, Virginia, South Lakes High School, number 73 player in the country in the On3 industry rankings. He's down to 3 schools, Michigan State, Virginia Tech, and Maryland. So Maryland's going against Michigan State for both of these guys in the DMV area. It's too bad for Michigan State that there's not as much in-state talent now as there was when Izzo was building the program. That makes some of these things harder in some respects. The good news is Izzo has a bigger name now than he had back then. He had to do it in-state back then. Now he can venture out a little bit more. Jordan Scott, good shooter, visited Maryland September 13th, Virginia Tech last weekend, Michigan State this weekend. So it looks like Michigan State's batting last, which is a good thing. Michigan State historically likes to bat last when they think they're leading. Do they think they're leading on this one? Yeah, I mean, it's hard for coaches to find out where they stand these days. Now, these guys are a little bit less of the true free agent NIL type of guys. There's other guys that you recruit that it is a straight free agent, highest bidder situation. And you can ask a guy, hey, do you like us? And he might say, yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. So a lot of times the coaches are even more in the dark now than they've been in the past, even when it was when all the payments were illegal. In some ways, it sounds like there's even more unknowns. But they like Scott and Ward is a Plan A plus guy. If they get him and they get Scott, they will feel real good about it. They're going to have a 2-man class, maybe a 3-man class, depending on what happens later. They're still in on Dwayne Aristode, 6'7" from Brewster Academy, New Hampshire, originally from the Netherlands. Number 10 player in the country, 6'7", small forward, official visit to Michigan State a few weeks ago. He's also visited Wake Forest and Arizona. He's been quoted as saying he likes what UCLA's done with international players in the past. Arizona could be hard to beat because there's some connections there. There's some sweetheart connections there, so watch out for Arizona with Aristode. But Michigan State will be happy. If they get Scott and Ward, they'll be happy. And all the consternation will have been for naught. I mean, there'll be people that will still be hand-wringing about things, but State will be happy with those two guys if they get them, so it's an important weekend. Question 6, Cedar Village Creature says, I think we will have a similar showing against Oregon due to the short week and quality of opponent in respect to the Ohio State game, he says. He says, what are the things to look for during this game for the wide receiver group? How do you view this game in relation to the Michigan game for Smith? Do you think he grasps the Oregon rivalry well? My answer on that is Jonathan Smith is a very even keel guy. If he's got a lot of emotion bubbling up and boiling within him, he hides it pretty well, which is a strength. That's a good thing. I don't detect a lot of hatred from him about the Oregon Ducks. I'm sure it's there, but it doesn't really come out. It doesn't seem like it's a jihad type of thing. And last year when they played Oregon, it seemed like all his handshakes with Dan Lanning seemed very civil and sportsmanlike. So, yeah, I don't think it's Lloyd Carr, Bobby Williams, Lloyd Carr, Mark D'Antonio, Jim Harbaugh, Mel Tucker, Jim Harbaugh. I don't think it's quite like that. But you can bet that he would love to beat the Ducks. I promise you that. He's a competitive guy. He wants to win every game, of course. But, he was asked about the Oregon thing a little bit this week, but not a ton. He was asked about it at football media days in Indianapolis by some Oregon writers to the point where he got a little irritated. not too irritated, but he's kind of terse and short with some answers because he knew where those guys were getting at and didn't want to feed into it. So I don't detect a lot of hatred, but you can bet as rivalries go, he would love to win this game, of course. Now the question about the wide receivers, he says, actually, was this the question? Okay. What are the things to look for during this game for the wide receiver group? There's another question on here about wide receivers. Let's see if I can find it. All right. I'll mix in with this question here. Question 12, Matthew from Winfield, Louisiana says, hey, Comp, thanks for all you do. I wanted to throw out some stats on Oregon secondary. Opponent completion percentage, 53% against the Oregon Ducks. That's 12th best in the FBS. Opponent yards per pass attempt, 4.6, number 4 in the country. Opponent pass yards per game, 150 yards per game, number 12 in the FBS. They played Oregon State, UCLA, Boise State, and Idaho. They kind of struggled in those first two games. They've won comfortably against a couple of teams, Oregon State and UCLA, that play poor defense. But in terms of the opposition being unable to throw the ball against Oregon, good stat. Opponent yards per pass, 4.6 per pass attempt, which is the stat in the pass game. It's hard to find those stats these days. The Big Ten page for stats is horrible. They revamped it. It's horrible. I don't know who's in charge of that thing. Hard to find good stats. But that is the stat, yards per pass attempt, and Oregon's number 4 in the country. He says, this is Matthew from Winfield, Louisiana. He says some impressive numbers through 4 games for an Oregon Ducks secondary that is extremely skilled and mature. Every starter in the secondary is a senior for the Ducks. He says, with that being said, it's safe to assume that our Michigan State usual targets will get plenty of attention from these defensive backs. He says, which receivers, not named Nick Marsh or Montori Foster, can you see stepping up and making an impact? Besides Marsh and Foster? Well, against Ohio State, Jaron Glover came back. Jaron Glover came back, 4 catches, 53 yards, and a nice 24-yard dig. Had a touchdown, 12 yards out. Jaron Glover's doing pretty well. Isaiah Johnson, 2 catches, including a 15-yarder. I think that was a dig also. Isaiah Johnson's been a good, solid receiver off the bench. Nick Marsh had 2 catches. Foster had 2 catches. It was easier for Michigan State to keep an eye on Foster because Marsh's playing time was down. In mop-up time, Jalen Smith, redshirt freshman, had a catch for 16 yards from Tommy Schuster. You know, Jalen Smith and Isaiah Johnson, both those guys, I liked their film in high school. I thought they were both underrated. Smith is from Texas, Isaiah Johnson from Virginia. I thought they were both underrated. I thought Michigan State did well to get both of those guys in the 11th hour 2 years ago. I thought there was a chance they might get in the playing group last year, but they redshirted. And then didn't see Jalen Smith kind of started in the spring game because of some injuries and so forth. And I was kind of wondering about Isaiah Johnson. I was like, man, did I overrate him a little bit? He was underrated nationally, but I liked him a lot. So I feel good about my evaluation of him, that he's come forward and shown that he can play Big Ten football, and he's just a redshirt freshman. I'm waiting for Jalen Smith. I think he's got potential also. But I don't know if these are impact guys for this game. Against Ohio State, Parachek, 2 catches, a nice over-the-shoulder catch on a nice touch pass on the opening drive from Childs. Jack Velling, 1 catch, that nice, it's kind of a skinny post over the middle, 26 yards, fumbles at the 10-yard line. Velling is a key guy as Michigan State tries to get more going in the red zone. What do you have, 6 touchdowns last year for Oregon State? He was the go-to guy in the red zone for Oregon State last year. Not been that so far for Michigan State this year. I'm sure he's getting a lot of attention down there and needs to come through it. Mekhi Frazier, the true freshman, had a catch and did something with it. And then Ademola Filet had a catch also, and he's still getting his legs under him. But those are the guys in the wide receiver group. You know, Antonio Gates played at the end of the Maryland game, and then he was injured and didn't play against Boston College, and we didn't see him last week either. He's got ability, but having trouble harnessing some consistency. He has the potential to do something, but if you're asking who besides Nick Marsh and Montori Foster can we expect to step up at wide receiver, I mean, there's Glover and there's Isaiah Johnson, and that's it. I mean, you only have so many receivers in your program. Andre Rison is not walking through that door. So besides Marsh and Montorie Foster, it's a short list. Isaiah Johnson. I don't, Gates is going to come along more slowly, I would think, but it is what it is there. And those guys have been getting open. They got open against Ohio State again. Foster had a little more trouble getting open in this game because he's better off when Marsh is out there with him, but you make a great point. Your point in general is that Oregon, statistically, very good pass defense. All right, let's see. All right. Question 8, Sparty from Pawleys Island, South Carolina says, hey, Jim, wondering if you've heard any talk about the NCAA allowing coaches to challenge anything in-game, like maybe one challenge per coach per half. A few calls in the Michigan State and Michigan games this weekend were atrocious, and in the case of Minnesota, might have cost them the game. Why not allow every play to be reviewable to prevent some of these obvious bad calls to be overturned? Or to allow them to be overturned, I think he's saying. My 2 cents anyway. That's the question. Have I heard anything from the NCAA about this? No, I have not heard anything. And I have trouble keeping up with rule changes. Rules are changing all the time. I don't even know what the rules are to change the rules. I don't know. Question 9, Ryan from Royal Oak, Michigan says, wondering if you could provide an update about the state of Michigan State's name, image, and likeness program. Clearly, this staff has the ability to scheme, but we are a ways away from the talent of an Ohio State and Oregon, etc. And name, image, and likeness will play a big part in Michigan State getting back to a 10-win team. What's the latest? That's from Ryan in Royal Oak. That's a great question, and you're right. I think Michigan State's got a chance to build a nice 9-3 type of team next year. Then you have to pay money to keep those guys. Then you're probably going to want to shop around here and there just to fill in some cracks. That's where I think they're headed as a program. Absolutely, NIL has to be a part of it. NIL comes up in all the recruiting conversations in football, basketball too. And I hear basketball recruiting NIL has, last year there was less money out there for basketball recruiting because of that COVID year that was around, and the portal was even stronger because of the COVID year was keeping players around longer. Now with the COVID year having moved on, now money's gone back up in the recruiting realm. I heard like 300, 400, 500% compared to last year. Football last year recruiting, I'd heard that the number, the costs, what you had to pay NIL-wise for recruits was down. Since it went up in basketball, I suspect it might be going back up in football. But your point is well made. You got to have NIL. Jonathan Smith needs NIL, and there's been no progress that I've heard of. Lots of discussions, lots of differences of opinion. They don't really have an NIL czar. They have differences of opinion. There's no question Jonathan Smith and his staff deserves full support here in that space in terms of structure and outreach. They need it. They expect it. And at some point it's going to happen. But got to have some come to Zeus meetings and get it figured out. Because as you can tell, it's not really been totally packaged and marketed to the fans like other programs have. And there's a reason for that. There's differences of opinion. So they kind of lack that czar, differences of opinion. So we'll see where it goes, but something needs to be happening soon. And I thought at the beginning of the summer it was going to be winding up and happening, but it's kind of, things are still stalled there. And it's not Jonathan Smith's fault. Question 10, Dorp 18, Livonia, Michigan says, do you think our football program will start to trend upwards if we have some good seasons, or do you think we will forever be locked into a 20 to 40-ish ranked recruiting class type of program? He says Jonathan Smith seems to focus more on developing the players we have than recruiting top 100 type of kids. Good question. He managed to sign Nick Marsh. He was a top 100 type of guy. I think they would like to have those type of guys. But I think he also wants low ego, high output guys. Some of those top 100 guys will be low ego guys. Nick Marsh is a low ego guy. Is Michigan State going to go out and try to sign people just to win a recruiting ranking? No. But the players that they like, do they end up being ranked solidly? Some of them will. My guess is they're going to be a recruiting class type of program that's going to settle somewhere in there between 25 and 39 most years, kind of like the D'Antonio years. That's my guess. Maybe it'll change. And maybe they can make their way into that top 25 once in a while, like D'Antonio did once in a while. That's my guess. But I do know that the Michigan State coaches are excited about the level of talent that is within their drivable recruiting radius, 4 hours, 4.5 hours from campus. And they will hit some national spots out west where they've got some connections, Florida. I think they shouldn't turn their back on Georgia. Michigan State did well in Georgia. Everybody recruits in Georgia. But Tucker did well in Georgia. I think Michigan State has not done much in Georgia in terms of outreach here in Jonathan Smith's initial first 9 or 10 months. I think that could be happening in the future, but they've got to get those networks reestablished, and they've got some people that can help down there. But players like Rakeem Johnson, might be hidden and not necessarily ranked high, but that's going to be part of it. Also, some in-state guys, your Brendan Paracheks, your Pretzloffs, those type of guys are going to continue to be solid with those guys. And I just think they're going to be somewhere in that 25 to 39. That's my guess. Maybe they'll be better. I don't know. This year, I think they're going to be outside of the top 45. They could have been in the top 45 if they took a couple of guys that they didn't end up wanting to go after that are ranked pretty high that would have helped the ranking, but not what they're looking for. I don't want to name any names. Question 11, Nick in Grand Rapids. Are there any players you wish you could see more on the field? Guys who have made plays out there yet might be lower on the depth chart. Players I want to see play more, he's asking. I'm not going to say that these guys should be playing more because the coaches are in practice and they know more about football than I do, and they're putting players out there that are the best ones. I don't doubt that at all. But in terms of players that are starting to show some glimpses of talent that I think are going to be intriguing to watch in the near future and in the distant future, Ben Roberts. I liked him a lot against Ohio State. He was firm. He was rotund. Sometimes his technique wasn't quite right, but he is strong. He's got some wheels and he's fired up. He's patting his belly after he made a play. He's got a great nickname, the Big Worm. The Big Worm. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Roberts has the makings to be a player, a football player, defensive tackle, and the football gods don't make many of those. Justin Denson, true freshman at safety, came in and laid a lick on some people. Playing some football. Justin Denson, second stringer, going to be in the playing group going forward, I think. Ken Talley did not play against Boston College, had a little bit of a tweak. He's been a passing downs guy, loud earlier in the year. Could he play more than just passing downs? I don't know. They know more than I do, but the guy's got some electricity to him, which is good. Quindarius Dunnigan's the guy that I was kind of curious. He didn't play in the first couple of games as much. Played against Boston College more. Did some good things out there. Good, solid second stringer. I kind of thought that he'd be one of the top 10 players in the team because he was, second team all Conference USA at Middle Tennessee State. I thought that would translate really well. But, Jalen Thompson's been starting. Bogle's been better the first couple of games than maybe I thought he'd be. Bogle's been a little bit more quiet the last couple of weeks. But Dunnigan's been second string waiting his turn. Solid. Starting to see Brendan Parachek more. Good, athletic, crafty, skillful, catch radius tight end. Still always working on his body to become more of a blocker, but Parachek's a star in the making. What was Parachek last year? Let me see here. Last year played 8 games, so he's a sophomore. You guys knew that, but I had to look it back up again. But Parachek is coming on strong. Velling will be back next year. Between Velling and Masunis and Parachek, tight end's going to be a strength here soon. And I like Wyatt Hook, too. Antonio Gates Jr., they were looking for things out of him, a little bit dinged up here and there, and didn't get to play in the first game. And then, boom, you're in the game against Maryland. 2-minute drill, you're in. Because Glover had gotten hurt, right? Makes a little check down catch over the middle of a shallow crossing route, 9 yards, gets the game-winning drive going. And then against Prairie View, got on the field, mop-up duty, wearing that number 1 jersey, caught like a crossing route. Maybe it was a dig, and looked fluid, looked like a fluid athlete, didn't he? He looked like a guy worthy of jersey number 1. You forget about that guy in the program. Like, that's what it's supposed to look like. Gates has it. He can help this team. He's been injured. He's been dinged up a little bit. That's somebody, I've said it before, I hope he stays with it. Like Konadike said, He needs to jump on the Lord's bus. Good kid. People like him. How much does he love football? I think that's what people are trying to find out, but he could help. I mentioned Jalen Smith earlier. Stanton Ramil, when he comes back, he was back in practice Monday and Tuesday. We'll find out whether he can play later this weekend. If he does come back, does he start at left tackle? If he does, where does Raheem Johnson fit? It's amazing. Raheem Johnson's a true freshman. He's played some left tackle. He's played some right guard. He's played some right tackle. As a true freshman, 3 positions. That's ludicrous. So does Raheem Johnson, they want to manufacture some depth. Fincher didn't play so great against Ohio State. He was looking better at the beginning of the year, did some decent things. Like he was splitting time with Brocious behind Christian Phillips. And I thought Fincher was kind of playing some of the best football I've ever seen him play. Not great, but it's kind of good, serviceable, better than last year. He started 2 games last year at center when Nick Samac was hurt. And he quickly lost the job to Tanner Miller when he transferred in. Playing guard, lost that job to Brocious and Phillips, both of whom became injured. Then Fincher looked like he was going to slot in there at that position. And instead they moved Baldwin there and put Ramil in, which, okay, I get it. They know better than I do. So now Johnson, if you want to get someone else on the field, if you got your starting 5, and let's say Johnson's the next guy off the bench, Fincher maybe, but Fincher didn't play against Boston College. And maybe he's playing hurt. I shouldn't even say that, but he looked pretty good in game like 2 and 3, and then he didn't play against Boston College, and then against Ohio State did not look like himself. So sometimes when that happens, I'm like, well, maybe something's going on there. But Raheem Johnson, if you bring him off the bench as the 6th guy to help give people a little bit of a breather, because Mahalchik would like to play 7 or 8 guys if he could. But if Johnson is the next guy off the bench, I wonder what position he goes in at. Maybe left tackle, I don't know. Right guard, I don't know. Ashton Lepo's coming around. I wasn't sure about him, and I've not seen many negative plays out of him lately. So that's progress. Longer-term guys I want to see, Mike Schunbeeler, defensive tackle, played 3 snaps against Prairie View. Coaches were raving about him at the beginning of August camp. Then he had a little bit of a ding. They don't need him right now because defensive tackle is pretty solvent. Even with Maverick Hansen getting a little bit shaken up. Hope he's doing all right. Good kid. Looked like a lower body situation. But Hansen going out coincides with Ben Roberts stepping up. So Mike Schunbeeler, Michigan State, should have the luxury of redshirting him, and people were talking good things about him. Talked about Marcus Pulliam. I'm not saying Pulliam deserves to be in the playing group, but the guy runs and can hit. He's out there hitting people. I appreciate that. Caleb Coley, coming back from injury. He's been out. Did he play against Penn State last year at the end of the year? Missed the spring. Then he was out for the August camp a little bit and kind of like I was like, is he still in the program? People are like, yeah, he's still in the program. Then last week, Demetrius Martin said he's on his way back now. He's back and available. I don't know if that puts him in the playing group, but Ade Willie's been in the playing group. And when healthy, Caleb Coley, in my estimation, has been a little bit better than Ade Willie. So does Caleb Coley come back and regain traction? And I think maybe we don't see him all year. I don't know, but I think there's a chance maybe he's in there competing for something. And then next year about other players, Dylan Tatum. Dylan Tatum, they missed his speed and his know-how at the safety position in that Boston College game. They really missed it because they were getting dinged up back there a little bit. And people coming in, going out, getting injured, getting in, going in, and then they give up the deep one. Dylan Tatum, they really could have used him in that game against Boston College, and they could have really used his speed against Ohio State, like on some of those crossing routes, man-to-man, when they gave up the touchdown, and on the 3rd down out route, when it was Armorion Smith matching up with Ibuka. If Dylan Tatum's on the team, those plays still might get made, but you got a faster guy tracking those things. They could use that. So I look forward to Tatum. If I'm a Michigan State guy, I look forward to him being back next year, along with Brocious and Phillips. And the rest of that stuff. What do we have? Got any more questions? Similar question. Jack from Forest Park, Illinois. Says, Jim, first of all, so far I've been completely impressed with Coach Smith. I feel like we have completely moved on from the stink of last season and the mess that was left behind by Mel Tucker. I will always love Harlan Barnett, Jack says, but moving forward with Coach Smith was absolutely the right call. He says, question, Now that we are more than 4 games in, do we have any true freshmen in danger of burning their red shirt? Is losing a year of eligibility worth the experience they will gain from playing time for an entire season? There are some players that are kind of getting into that realm, and Jonathan Smith said that they will have discussions with some of those players, and they are cognizant of it, and they don't want to go ahead and have players burn their 4 games up early. So, yes, they're looking long-term. They're making those decisions. In terms of guys that are not going to redshirt, obviously Nick Marsh not going to redshirt. Obviously Rakeem Johnson not going to redshirt. The others are all capable of redshirting, but I think Justin Denson is going to be in the playing group. He's going to play. He's not going to redshirt. Smith didn't come out and say it that way, but it sure sounded like that. It sounded like that's what he was indicating, that Denson's going to play. And he brings a little bit more speed maybe than Armarion Smith back there at first glance. Denson's been a little better than I expected. Coming from Rhode Island, and that what academy was it he had somewhere in New Hampshire or Pennsylvania or something. And his film was okay, and his recruitment was a little bit quirky and committed, not committed. I was like, man, I don't know about that guy. But I tell you what, he's proved me wrong. Any doubts that I had, the guy's shown up, capable, and he's a keeper. Rustin Young played a little bit. I suspect they'll redshirt him. Brady Pretzlaff, plan is to redshirt him from what I understand. Andrew Brinson, corner, played 2 games, 20 snaps. Got in this game against Ohio State. Showed some want to. Got in there, threw his nose in the fan. Sometimes looked a little light in the pants, as Sean Resper used to say. A little light. Went in for a collision, didn't win the collision, but showed some want to. I suspect if there are no more further injuries at the corner position, he might redshirt as well. But he'd be like he's a discussion guy. Mike Schonbeeler, I suspect, is going to redshirt. They seem to be pretty good at defensive tackle. Kakai Burnett played a little bit against Prairie View. I think he redshirts. Jalen Thompson, 18 snaps, Prairie View. I think he redshirts. Brandon Tullis, 2 games, 9 snaps. Makai Frazier, 2 games, 8 snaps. Unless there's injuries at the running back positions, I suspect they would like to redshirt those guys. But that can change in a hurry at the running back position. So right now, Nick Marsh, Rakeem Johnson, those 2 guys playing. And Justin Denson, those 3, that's who I think. On the edge, thin ice, Brinson, maybe A.J. Dennis, depending on injuries. Rustin Young, maybe, depending on injuries, but I think they like to redshirt those guys because Rustin Young's not quite ready, in my estimation. That's just me. No one's told me that about Rustin Young. I'm just going by what my eyes are telling me. All right, let's go up here to the comments area. We've had a fun night tonight. SpartanMag Live. A lot of competition out there in the real world, real television. But those of you that enjoyed the escape, I enjoyed it also. Lyle Moore from North Carolina says, I still think 6-7 wins is reasonable for this year. I think it's possible too. I mean, they have to really reduce some errors, but they're dangerous, but inconsistent. Chris Okiki says they got to improve on run offense. Yes. Pass offense. Yes. Run defense. Yes. Pass defense. Yes. Lyle Moore says run defense is pretty solid. I would agree. And if not for turnovers, pass offense has been moving the ball pretty effectively, especially when all receivers are healthy, even against Ohio State. I would agree with that. Good to hear from Spunky181. Sea-Dog says 6-6, probably best case scenario. I don't know if that's best case scenario. It might be most likely. Mike Hoochie says, I'm worried that Gehrig is not developing at all. Yeah, it's going to be a tough slog for him. Mike Hoochie says, oh, we're still talking about football? My bad. I thought we had moved on. No, Mike. We're doing all of it. Austin Wolf says, no quitting these guys left from the last administration. I don't see them folding. Chucky Houston says 5-7 season at best. Might turn out to be right. Spartan MD says, hey, JC, just finished watching the debate. Happy to hear some sports, Spartan sports. And then there came the sound problem. Sorry about that. Then we got it fixed. Thank you. $5 Thomas says, love that hoops footage. Thanks. Nate Barron says, when was that footage? That footage was from last week's practice. That was practice number 2. MSU Detroit fan says, just waiting for hockey to begin. Hockey's beginning this weekend at Lake Superior State. Michigan State at Lake Superior State this weekend to begin the season, ready for year 3 of Adam Nightingale. Correct. interesting year this year. You got expectations, number 4 in the preseason polls. Season starts this weekend in Sault Ste. Marie. In the early part of the season, as you got there's going to be always some good games in the fall that gets overshadowed by football. Then things lighten up in December, which makes no sense except for the GLI. Michigan State's going to try to win that for the first time in a while. Try to get a string going. It's going to be in Grand Rapids again. Northern Michigan's going to be in it this year. And January, is it January 2nd or 3rd? Chicago, Wrigley Field against, is it Wisconsin? Outdoor game. I'm kind of planning to be there. I think I'm going to be there. That might be all right. That might be interesting. Nate Barron says, are we going to get anyone for the class of 225 for hoops? Really getting worried about this class after missing out on Harrelson, Adams, and seeing NBL in the conversation for Aristode for the 5 stars. Like I said a minute ago, Cam Ward and Jordan Scott. If they get those 2, then they'll feel real good about it. MSU Detroit fan says, expecting the MSU hockey team to avenge the football team against Boston College since BC is coming to Munn for the home opener. Yeah, that's coming up, next week? Gosh. Boston College was good last year. Michigan State was talented, but Boston College was really talented. I don't know how many of those guys they have coming back, but that's going to be good. That'll be good. I'll be there for the first one. Then I'll be going up north for the Northern Michigan basketball game. I don't know if I'll be able to see the second one or not. GT, do you think Michigan State will play Oregon closer than they did Ohio State? The score might be closer, but they might not be as competitive. Does that make sense? Or it could be one of those Iowa Kinnick Stadium ambush situations. I'm concerned about that for Michigan State's sake. I would be concerned about that. But I'm watching Oregon tonight. You have to wait for the pre-snap read to see what I think about these things. MSU Detroit fan says, just give some hockey talk. Trey Augustine or whoever is filling in the hole for Levshunov going 2nd overall in the NHL draft. I was not at Media Day for hockey last week. I have to go back and watch the video to get a handle on it. They've got a lot of newcomers. And with the way they did with implementing transfer portal last year, transfer portal scouting, evaluation, implementation was great, creating a top 5 team. So I've seen the names, I've seen some of the credentials, but I can't recite them right now. You're all excited about hockey. I appreciate that. Tigers won. Austin Wolf says, Tullis and Frazier will be a great tandem in 2 years. Trust it. All right, you said it, Austin. I'm not so sure, but Sean Schrock says, hi, guys. First time watching. I'm an Ohio State fan. Just wanted to say your program is headed in the right direction. Much respect. Beat Michigan. Good luck the rest of the year. Sean Schrock, I agree with that, and I think that Ohio State people were impressed with some of the things Michigan State did, if they were honest with themselves, and a lot of them were, like Sean right here. Because Childs can sling it, and Michigan State held firm against the run inside here and there. Got some receivers open. Got out-talented, out-drag raced in the perimeter a few times, but made Ohio State work. And that game was closer than the score indicated, for what that's worth. Door91 says, we need Magic and Gores to get off their purse. You don't see a lot of former athletes throwing NIL money around. I mean, it should be I don't know if he's allowed to, the Phoenix Suns thing or whatever. And technically, he's a former athlete. But by and large, I don't know if you're seeing a lot of former athletes, name athletes, throwing NIL money around. Global Merchant says, just want to note that just like in the D'Antonio era, young players and unknown players showed up and showed out. Hats off to the staff for putting them in the right position. True. Rusty, with an asterisk, says, I have nothing to add, but just want to say I always love watching this channel. Thank you, Rusty. Fleet says, 10,000 subs. You got this. Thank you, Fleet. Appreciate it. Appreciate all you guys for helping us get to 10,000 subs. You guys remember when I was just getting this going, I said, hey, man, you got to subscribe. You got to subscribe to this. We need to get to 1,000. Need to get to 1,000. Because once you get to 1,000, it gives you a different threshold with algorithms and YouTube things. And you guys helped me get to 1,000. Helped all of us get to 10,000. And it's helped this channel to really become, I think, a trusted companion for Michigan State fans through football season, basketball season, the off season, recruiting, and going way, way back to when we really started getting this done. Started doing this way back during COVID. And I remember saying at that time, it was spring and it was everything was weird. I said, man, don't worry. It's going to be Thanksgiving soon. It's going to be Thanksgiving soon. And when you get to be my age, Thanksgiving comes soon. And then January comes soon. And then 2025 comes soon. And then 2026 comes soon. If you're young, you may not be able to relate to that. But I swear, for some people, I mean, COVID was different for different people. But for me, man, it did kind of go by. It was just so frantic, went by fast, and boom, it was Thanksgiving. That's a long time ago, right? Kind of seems like it wasn't. Got to slow things down, right? Slow things down. Thanks, Doors fan. Give us a like. We appreciate that. Nate Barron says, I'm going to the outdoor game in Wrigley. Look at tickets soon. They are sparse and going fast. Might need resale, but you perhaps don't need to worry. I didn't know that they were going fast because some of those, when they have a college outdoor game, they usually don't sell all that well, from what I understand. I mean, the two Michigan State games did, but when they do it in conjunction with the NHL Winter Classic, it's kind of a sideshow thing, and it usually doesn't draw all that great, but you're saying they're going fast? That'd be good. Speaking of which, if I'm going to be in Chicago, I wonder how much tickets are going to be for the Winter Classic. Probably too much, but too much to make it worthwhile, but I've never seen one of those. Saw the original Cold War at Spartan Stadium. That was fun. The original one, that was good. Almost didn't happen. I mean, that weather thing with the rain was like really tenuous. That was right after 9/11. Some of you might remember there was, all of a sudden there was heightened security to get in, and there was really a problem with getting people in. I didn't get in. I went in as a fan that night and didn't get in, I think, late in the first period. It was just waiting to get in. Anyway, hey, man, appreciate everybody checking in, chiming in, and your questions. Appreciate your support. Appreciate your likes. If you're not already a SpartanMag subscriber, go check it out. Our written content over there covering Michigan State Spartans, doing our best. Been doing it for years and years and years, and we hope that we become your trusted correspondents here in East Lansing covering Michigan State football and basketball and recruiting. Jason Killip, Paul Cornerback, myself, Kenny Jordan, Matt Dorsey chiming into the message boards. Big movie, Ron Armstrong. Always love hearing from him. He's been under the weather, couldn't join us tonight, but it's a cast of thousands, and with your help, with more subscribers, Jake Laskower doing a great job. With your help, we can do even more in terms of bolstering our coverage staff for you at SpartanMag.com. In the meantime, we will see you next week. Go over there, check out the VCast that Paul and I recorded today from outside the Perlis Plaza. I'll be covering Oregon this weekend out there. Pre-snap reads coming up. Become a subscriber. You can check it out over there. Appreciate everybody checking in. Thanks for your support. We'll see you soon. Take care of each other. Thank you.